Hey guys, it's Nathan from the Kentucky Cycling YouTube channel. We are in Clinton, Missouri, where we're getting ready to start our ride on the Katy Trail. The Katy Trail is America's longest rail trail. Clocks in just under 240 miles. We drove up from Kentucky yesterday into St. Charles, which is almost to the eastern terminus of the trail, and then got a bike shuttle at the bike stop outpost there in St. Charles and took it west to the western terminus here in Clinton, Missouri. So we spent last night here at the Hampton Inn, and we're going to start our ride here shortly. There's a lot of rain in the forecast, so we will get wet on this ride.
It's going to rain on your head.
Come along with us for our wet adventure as we bike pack the next 3 nights from here back to St. Charles on the Katy Trail.
The Katy Trail is actually a state park that is built on the corridor of the former Missouri, Kansas, Texas, or the MKT Railroad, better known as the Katy. When the railroad ceased operation on its route in Missouri from Mockins in St. Charles County to Sedalia in Pettis County in 1986, Missouri State Parks was able to acquire the railroad right-of-way through an amendment to the National Trail System Act. The riding surface of the trail is crushed limestone, which packs hard and is good for running, hiking, or cycling. In drier conditions, crushed limestone can be dusty. In the wet conditions we were riding in, the trail became sandy with a fair amount of squish that'll make you long for a little wider tire. And it didn't take long for our bikes to become covered in sand. So much so that by the time we reached our first rest stop, it looked like we had left our bikes out on the beach for a week. For multi-day rides, you may want to bring along supplies to clean and lube your chain. A really cool feature of the Katy Trail is that many old rail stations, as well as some train depots, have been restored as part of the development of the state park. The old rail stops provide covered benches with panels that highlight the history of the trail, towns, and the region. They also typically provide at least a pit toilet, and many have water as well.
All right, guys, so we're 25 miles into our ride. I know we had some rain this morning, but how y'all feeling?
Yeah, I've got this strange sense of euphoria. I feel great.
I feel it's amazing. I don't know what it is. I feel the best I've felt all day.
Wow. You know what? You know what I think it might be?
I don't know.
I think it might be because we've reached the high point of the Katy Trail.
I did a fair amount of reading and video watching about the trail ahead of our ride, and one aspect that I don't think the average source conveys is just how remote and wild the trail really is. Seeing images of cyclists at old train stops tends to give an impression of traveling through a series of small towns, but the overall feeling you get from being here is more like traveling through a nature preserve that stretches on in long, straight lines for miles on end. We saw lots of different birds along the trail, including cardinals, a Baltimore oriole, red-tailed hawks, red-winged blackbirds, doves, and blue jays, but no bird was as prevalent as the indigo bunting. During my cycling and hiking experiences back home, seeing an indigo bunting is somewhat of a rarity. But while riding along the Katy Trail, I can conservatively say that I saw at least 50 of these beautiful little birds, though the actual number could have easily been closer to 100, which was a real treat. Alright guys, so we went about 65 miles today and we stopped in Pilot Grove, Missouri. And really cool thing about Pilot Grove is they will let you camp in their city park, and you just have to call the police to let them know that you're going to be here, and there's no charge. So one cool little setup here. So they've got these cool shelters. So there's a little bathhouse over here, and this is a real charming little community. So you can see actually off in the distance there's a second group of bikers at another shelter. And we're gonna have some rain and wind tonight, so it's gonna be pretty darn nice to be up under this shelter. Right, Jacob?
That is right.
One resource that's available on the bikekatytrail.com website that I didn't notice until after our trip is an elevation chart. As you can see, there is some variation in the western section, with the most noticeable downhill being in the section before we reached Booneville. From Booneville, the trail continues an overall gradual descent as it runs alongside the Missouri River. When you reach Booneville, the trail currently crosses the Missouri River via Boone's Lick Bridge. However, efforts are underway to restore the Katy Bridge.
The Missouri-Kansas-Texas Bridge, or MKT Bridge number 191.1, was constructed in 1932 and has a long and significant history. At the time of construction, the design was progressive. It was the longest central vertical lift span railroad bridge at 408 feet long. The Katy Bridge Coalition believes that the Katy Bridge, once rehabilitated, will be the crown jewel of the Katy Trail and will provide cyclists and pedestrians with a unique Missouri River crossing experience. The Missouri State Parks website does a good job of highlighting temporary closures of the trail due to weather, stewardship activities, and maintenance, along with a list of official detours. We knew going into this trip that one such closure exists around mile 181.4, the Salt Lick Creek Bridge being out due to flooding. We also learned from some other sources that if the creek's not up too high, you can actually cross the creek to the right of the bridge and rejoin the trail a lot sooner. The majority of the Katy Trail closely follows the route of the Missouri River, so trail users often find themselves with the river on one side and towering bluffs on the other. Between mile 178 and 179 on the Katy Trail, we passed through the Roachport Tunnel. The tunnel was built by men and mules in 1893 for the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad. The tunnel's construction is said to have caused some controversy. This is possibly because the tunnel cuts through a hill featured in Lewis and Clark's journals chronicling their expedition. Before the hill was blasted away by dynamite, it was called Manitou Bluff and was well known to people in the 1800s. The bluff's limestone walls also featured large cave drawings and pictographs, all of which were destroyed by the tunnel's construction. The tunnel is 243 feet long and is lined in brick, stone, mortar, and earth. It also has an interesting arched ceiling and is the only stone tunnel on the Katy Trail.
We spent our second night on the trail in Hartsburg, Missouri, in part to have a little shorter day, clocking 51 miles, but also because a pretty nasty storm front was rolling in. Camping is free at the volunteer park, and we were very thankful to be able to camp in the gazebo, which is only a short walk to the trailhead, which has clean bathrooms with running water. The next morning, we set out for what would be our longest day of riding of just under 80 miles. It would also prove to be the wettest day, so Lucas appropriately labeled his Strava ride as the Long Wet Haul. We spent our last night on the trail in Marthasville, Missouri. We made it to the community club park ahead of the biggest rain of the day, and we were very happy to pay $5 apiece to be able to sleep under the large pavilion at the ball fields, which also had electric and showers. One of the prominent historical figures of the area who also played a big role in Kentucky's history is Daniel Boone. During the early days of westward expansion, Boone's explorations helped open the frontier to new settlements. In 1799, he led his family and other settlers across the Mississippi River into land populated by Native Americans but claimed by Spain. Boone spent the last 20 years of his life in what is now Missouri. In fact, his original resting place is only a half a mile off the trail, so we stopped off to get a look. This site is of particular interest to me as I grew up and now live in Frankfort, Kentucky, and one of my favorite spots in town is the final resting spot of Daniel Boone and his wife Rebecca. Another significant piece of American history that is tied to the Missouri River and westward expansion is the expedition of Lewis and Clark. In fact, President Thomas Jefferson's instructions to Meriwether Lewis were as follows, quote, "The object of your mission is to explore the Missouri River in such principal stream of it as, by its course and communication with the waters of the Pacific Ocean, may offer the most direct and practicable water communication across this continent for the purposes of commerce." End quote. As previously mentioned, the Katy Trail is home to lots of wildlife. In addition to the host of birds previously noted, we saw white-tailed deer, chipmunks, and squirrels and rabbits galore. But by far the most memorable creatures we encountered were 4 different snake species. In addition to seeing a black rat, a prairie king, and a copperhead, the most memorable snake we encountered was this timber rattlesnake. I'm so grateful to be able to explore new places by bicycle, and these multi-day rides where I get to experience an area for the first time with friends are definitely my favorite adventures. As Ernest Hemingway so eloquently stated, quote, "It is by riding a bicycle that you learn the contours of a country best, since you have to sweat up the hills and can coast down them. Thus you remember them as they actually are, while in a motor car only a high hill impresses you, and you have no such accurate remembrance of country you have driven through as you gain by riding a bicycle." End quote. As always, we hope you found this content useful. If you did, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks.